Well, welcome back, everyone. This is a family office club, and welcome to our pro athlete interview series. Now, our investor club, in case you're new to us, has about 7,500 registered investors. We've hosted events, about 275 across the US and worldwide over the last 17 years, and we have about 13 million followers. So maybe from our live events or online, you might have seen us there, and if case not, welcome. And after having these different pro athletes, doctors, private investors, and different billionaires on stage at our events, we decided to go deep and see what it takes to be the top 0.1% performer. And we thought, how better to do that than interviewing a series of pro athletes like Heath here on his mindset, investments, visualization practices, affirmations, and discipline. So, Heath, I just want to say thank you for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, well, why don't we get started? Why don't we hear a little bit about what you did, I guess, in the past and sort of what you're doing now, just to get, I guess, our viewers and listeners up to speed.
Yeah, so starting when I was about 20 years old, I got the opportunity to play professional soccer. So I went through at the time was a unique high school experience. Now you have most professional teams have set up professional academies where players are either living in or training in professional environments. But back then, I went to what was IMG Academy in Florida, and there was a program that was created called Project 2010, and I'll keep this part of it short. But the idea was that the U.S. was going to win a World Cup by 2010. It was an overly ambitious project, but the idea of it was we need to start doing what the rest of the world is doing. And so I got the opportunity to go to high school there. Ended up having a broken leg. So that sort of took me off my path of, hey, I want to go from high school to the professional ranks. And ended up going to college at University of Portland for 2 years. And that gave me the opportunity from there to start my career in Copenhagen, Denmark. And I ended up playing 11, 12 years professionally, a little over half of those with the U.S. men's national team. So felt very fortunate to have the experiences that I had. And again, has helped to give me sort of a career beyond playing the game over the last 6 years since I retired.
Okay, and what are you doing now after you retired? You did 10 to 12 years and then you retired, and are you doing something still in the sports space or investment space or?
Yeah, so part of the reason I did retire was because about halfway through my playing career, somebody had said to me, "Hey, you should think about getting into media." And I never really thought about it up to that point. I thought about it a little bit, but just that comment that somebody said opened my eyes up to saying, okay, this is not going to last forever, this thing. And I need to find, not necessarily from a financial standpoint, the next thing, but the next thing that I can fall in love with and want to put the effort in and get the reps and do all of that. So when I was 30, I had the opportunity to transition from playing, and I was out of contract. I was entertaining a few offers, and then an offer came to get into the media space where I would learn how to write, read off of a teleprompter, learn my voice, be on camera 5 days a week. And I took the opportunity and never looked back. And that sort of propelled me into the content creation and media space on the creative side. And then I quickly realized, like, wow, this has a shelf life just like a player. So I need to learn other things. And as the company I was with at the time was called Copa 90, was going through an evolution, I thought, you know what, I need to do more. I can't just be on camera where I can, write and be on camera talent. I need to do other things. So I started contributing to creative pitches and bringing in potential clients from when I was playing the game and had like endorsements and sponsorships. So being able to sort of, it opened the door to me leveraging my background to get me a seat at the table of things I might not be otherwise qualified for. And that moved me into a whole new world. And so transition from that, I've spent the last 6 years doing on-camera work. So right now I'm doing a lot of work with MLS on Apple TV. So Major League Soccer, Apple TV has the rights. It's called MLS Season Pass. So I do that for most games in the season, mostly in the Western Conference. And then the other thing is the end of 2019, I launched with a small group and a single private equity investor named Richie Graham, a company called For Soccer, with two strategic focuses. One, properties, so strategic investment or controlling interest investments in soccer-based properties. So we have a grassroots property in the Hispanic space, in the women's space, and in the Black soccer space around growth communities. And then the other side is a creative agency offering. So we offer sort of the full suite of agency services for brands, leagues, teams, rights holders, things like that.
I love that. Yeah, and I guess it's sort of, I mean, the whole point of these series is to ask people like yourself of like how they got to be in the 0.1% of one, the athletic space, but then really to see them still do that same in these other spaces too, whether that's in the media, whether it's the private equity side. And there's a lot of, I think, synergies of sort of mindsets, visualization practices that you must have used then or that you've developed throughout that process and that you're using now. And that's sort of what we want to sort of find out is sort of like, do you use any kind of visualization, affirmation, or do you set goals for yourself, or what strategies are you using to not only dominate when you're playing professionally for 10 to 12 years, but now dominating in these different spaces?
Yeah, interestingly, I've kind of got two trains of thought with everything that I do. One of them is on the personal success side, the goals. I set goals. I do a lot of visualization. I do a lot of meditation. I do a lot of sort of short and long term visualizations that I want to accomplish. And
Mm-hmm.
then the part two to that is reining a lot of that back in to measure time. I've got 3 young kids. I've got a life. During my professional playing career, your calendar is completely controlled for you. When
Mm-hmm.
you get a day off, you might not get one for a while. If you're winning, you might get more. And there's all these performance based incentives, but you don't own your time. And so as I've transitioned beyond that, whether that's personal investments that I'm in or work, is pushing my ambition and my goal sets as high as I can, and then reining it back in versus the ultimate goal, which is creating more time to focus on other things, more time to focus on hobbies and interests, more time with family. And so that's sort of, I start on one end and then the other, and I try to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think that sounds very healthy.
Yeah,
And
I
I
try to
think,
be. I try to be. I try to. That is the. I lived in a world where it was unhealthy enough, and you have a single track mind, and I used to go home from training, and at that point, you're recovering for the next training, right, and
mhm.
ultimately prepping for the game. And there was such a stress on, like, if I had to go in. If I was living in New York and I had to walk a while to go meet a friend, I'd be like, okay, that's a lot of walking. Should I be walking? Every moment of every day was programmed, and trying to keep all the benefits of the discipline needed with that, keep all of the upsides that came with that, and maybe tinker with some of the things that you don't have the presence of mind of knowing, oh, that's negative for you. That's not good to have that mentality, or to stress over things that you can't control and things like that.
Yeah, do you feel like that might be sort of like your why, or maybe a way to balance out things, or maybe like, oh man, I can drive in this area of my life because I know it's either like supporting or that I know that it's making out, or I'm able to carve out time for the family or personal side? Is that sort of where you're finding that balance for yourself?
Yeah, when I signed my first professional contract, I was working with a small financial advisor from my hometown. I didn't know anything about it, and
Hmm.
I said, I need to make. I want to have a passive income of $250,000 net when I retire, and so we set the goals there, and everything became sort of related to that. And I realized, one, that the power in trying to manifest and set goals and do those things, but also the negative effects that when things don't go your way, you start thinking about 10, 15, 20 years down the line, and how unhealthy that could be. And so learning to again find that balance of control, find that balance of progress, see the beauty in it not being just a parallel path to where you want to go, and trying to, one, enjoy those moments, but more than anything, each of those sort of setbacks, or turning a dead end into a detour, learning from those, embracing those, and then seeing how I can do better the next time. And so it's allowed me in the investing space to get access and find access to better opportunities than I would have otherwise from losing, right? From the first investment that went wrong, to learning, oh, it's not bad. How can I use that to my advantage from a tax standpoint? And all those steps that help to grow you that nobody teaches you, I instead of feeling bad about losses that I took or losses that I incurred, whether on the field or in real world, turning those into to benefits, because I got the opportunity and have enough personal opportunity and resources to learn from it and grow from it.
No, I love that. And it kind of leads us right into our next one of like, what's a $1 million financial mistake that either you've made or that you see being made, and that you'd sort of give that insight to either a current player or one that's getting out? Is there something that you've learned that you could sort of pass on?
Yeah, I think athletes are naturally skeptical, right? We're trusting coaches, trusting teammates. You're in and out of locker rooms. You have this single mentality where somehow your own ambitions have to fit within team ambitions and what you want to do and taking care of your family. That every pitch is a creative one. Every pitch that you get offered is a great one. Each one of them starts with this incredible outcome. And I would challenge, and I experienced that through, again, my first opportunity to invest in a tech platform that I was like, wow, this is going to change the world. And it flopped immediately. And then, you hear the stories that everybody hears, the 1.01% story of the Ashton Kutchers, right? And then you finally hear like, oh yeah, he invested 100 and one hits and 99 don't. And learning how the process works and understanding how to take strategic risks and how to ask the right questions so that you feel good knowing what the outcome might be, what the odds actually are of something succeeding, whether it's from an investment standpoint, whether it's from an sweat equity standpoint, just those types of things, to ask the right questions. And I think athletes are a lot closer to people that can really help them thrive in the investment world than they think they do. But there's a lot of, I guess, less than good people that have even closer access to the athlete, right? And so it's about asking questions and finding avenues and lanes that you're passionate about to get involved in. And that's where I've found the most joy from an investment standpoint.
Okay, and like from a financial mistake perspective, is it something where you'd recommend either getting those advisors to help you, or asking the questions, or finding something that you're passionate about that you can lean into? Or like, what's sort of a way that you can help navigate someone from making a big financial mistake if it might sound too good to be true, or maybe they've heard about it a little bit and it sounds super sexy, but maybe, they're like, oh, this isn't just one tech player. There's 100 others that are competing with it. Like, what recommendation would you give to a player that way?
Honestly, for me is setting aside an amount of money that you can learn with. And I think you have to have skin in the game to learn. And if you don't, it's really easy. And until you feel those butterflies of capital deployment, or somebody coming back on your scheduled call saying, hey, we're going to have to shut this thing down, we're going to write it down, and seeing where your benefits can now be from a loss standpoint, and how that can actually help you in some of the other things that you're doing. I think that creating a pool of money that you can learn from, it's something that I did, and I used it to say, this is my MBA. This right here, this isn't meant to create my retirement. This isn't meant to earn me whatever it is that my personal goals are. This is for learning, and I can either go to school and try to learn this, or I can use this to get to people who can teach me the things, or I can invest it in things and really dive in and learn. And so having that, and it can be a very small amount of money, right? It's just about having skin in the game, because that's where I think for me, the learning started, where somebody throws terms to me, or somebody's talking about, subsectors and things like that. I'm like, I don't know what any of this stuff means, so I better start learning, right? And it's, you start spending a lot more time educating yourself. And so having skin in the game strategically in a way that forces your commitment, I think, is really, really important. Now I'm talking about, everybody has a sliding scale of risk, but for me to be able to play that game and immerse myself created accountability more than anything, where I said, okay, now I'm accountable for this. I've decided to do this, and I need to learn, or I'm going to go and do this. And so I better learn before I continue to make more mistakes. So I think having that skin in the game at a low risk amount allows you to be a player and educate yourself and learn from mistakes ultimately.
Yeah, and I think it does. A lot of people talk about allocation and diversifying your portfolio, but that's a whole nother piece of it. Of like, all right, in that diversified portfolio, where maybe some's real estate, maybe some's in index funds, or maybe some in new tech platforms or things that there is in that risk side, where some of it is that's what you're going to use to learn with. So I think that's very smart. And then also, I guess,
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I guess the one thing some people don't know too is like, you can always dip your toes in water and do a follow-on investment. So if they're like, oh, we need 100,000, you're like, okay, well, we're going to come in with 25 and maybe we'll see how it goes. And then if it goes well, maybe you don't get the same terms, but might be a way to sort of dip your toe and know that you can actually play in a few of those different pools without being all in, depending on what amount of risk you're able to play with.
Absolutely. There's so many different ways to go in. There's fund options for people. And I think funds are another thing that, you know, I've had opportunities early on in my career where I was distracted. I was playing and I invested in a fund opportunity and I was just removed from it completely. And now, you know, I'm on all of, I show up to all the conferences, I ask all the questions, I try to sit in the front row. And now I'm just trying to become much more of a savvy investor because one, the network that you're in, but two, you get a chance to watch how it actually works. And again, I used the Ashton Kutcher example earlier, but you get a chance to see that you think that you know, you give the example, you said 25,000 or 100,000 into this, and you go, okay, here it is, and well, we don't need it all now. And you're like, well, you start to understand that, like, oh yeah, there's going to be capital calls in this process, and you know, you don't need to give all your money right away. And then when they do, and then the follow-on opportunities, so there's certain co-investment opportunities on ones that maybe you're seeing some trajectory or something you're personally passionate about and have learned about, or those types of things. So it allows you to be low stakes. Somebody else is sort of deploying that capital, but it allows you to be an active player versus you know, maybe in other cases where you might be in an ETF or something where you're kind of just watching things go up and down, and maybe you're watching market trends. It allows you to be involved and again, learn a lot, which I think is so important in this space, especially for the athlete who has varying levels of education, varying levels of interest in this space, but tends to go from no money to a lot of money in a very quick amount of time.
Yeah, and I guess what about sweat equity? I know you mentioned it, but I know there's probably some financial and costly mistakes, whether it's brand values, the quality, or the amount of time you even have to give. Like, do you have any recommendations or sort of like pitfalls to watch out for that you'd sort of recommend to players if they're getting offered, like, all right, we'll give you 5% if you rep us or do XYZ? Like, do you have any recommendations for that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities in the space because there's so many athletes, right? We often focus on the ones that, you know, made 9 figures off of the body armor deals and you know, these types of things where you have these unicorn type of multiples. But there are things out there that if you're passionate about, that's one. I think the other part is people tend to have a financial advisor, or they'll have a manager, they'll have an agent, and they're bringing in all these types of things. That there are unique opportunities out there that you've got to decide, right? Do you want a small amount of cash? And there's thousands of these stories, right, of the successes, but nobody really talks about how you've now sort of boxed yourself out of a category because you wanted the cash up front for this brand who could pay you little versus maybe equity in another brand for doing the work, but there's no upfront cash, and you have a really short shelf life as an athlete. And so I don't know if I have necessarily an answer to that question specifically as to what recommendations I would make, but I do think that there's a lot of opportunities out there that shouldn't just be inbound. I think an athlete has an opportunity to be outbound with opportunities where you can be reaching out to brands. There's brands that I've got equity in because it started with a direct message of like, love your product. Oh, let us send you a little bit. Okay, cool. Like, yeah, can I get a little more of that product? And you build a relationship, and maybe it's not year one, or maybe you're a tier 3 athlete in terms of scale of audience and how they would typically leverage you. But when they see your willingness to work and they see how much you actually care about the brand and you're not, you know, it's led to bigger opportunities. So I think there is, I guess my answer would be to look for those outbound opportunities where you can reach out about things that you like or that you're passionate about, or a product that you want to try, because that could lead to things that have long-term benefits for you beyond just consumption of a product of some kind.
Yeah, and it's authentic. I think that's a very key thing, and hopefully the brand would see that too. And then obviously you'd be supporting someone that you would have anyways for a brand or a company or, you know, founders that way.
Right.
Okay. And I guess for our last question, like if someone wants to be in the 0.1%, whether that's professional sports field, whether that's in the media space with yourself or private equity, how are they able to outcompete everyone around them? Like, how were you able to be more disciplined, how were you able to run circles around them? Maybe it was balancing those different directives and objectives in your personal and professional life. But how would you recommend someone to outcompete those around them?
I think it's just reps. The more I've taken strategic risks, the more I've put myself out there, the more I've educated myself, the more I can sit in a room and speak the language of the people around me, the more opportunities that come. I invest in this thing that gets me to a person who, for me, the personal goal is to keep growing personally and growing wealth. And the more you can network, it's really, really hard when you're playing the game, right? Because as an athlete, as a current athlete, you've got this strong discipline. Everything else is a distraction. You have plenty of time to do it. I wouldn't say do nothing, but you have plenty of time to do it at a certain point. But during your playing career is when you're, I guess, most valuable. You have the most access. You have the most opportunity to meet people and talk to people and learn that you can then transition into a space or get opportunities that you might not get when your career is done. And so I think to get to that top percentile, it's a mix of everything it took me as a player, but now in a new world, but a true willingness to learn. It's not just about the fact that you have money to now invest because of what you did in your career or because you were an athlete, someone's going to give you opportunities. You still have to put in the same amount of work, effort, reps, discipline, and all those things. And if you can apply all of that with critical thinking and I guess a team of people around you that you trust, I think that getting to that point, you've got a head start coming off of a playing career.
And I guess just for a follow-up, how do you find that team that you trust? So maybe that's, your partner, your wife, your husband, maybe that's that financial advisor, but how were you able to find, or how were you able to build that team around you that you do trust?
Yeah, it's that personal growth. Who you trust today might not be who you trust tomorrow. You might not have the same team. I didn't play on the same team for my whole career. My goal was, okay, I'm going to start here, but I got to go up, right? I told you I started with a financial advisor in my hometown. And then at a certain point, I thought, come from a little small town. Is this like, if this was my team that I wanted to play on, would I be happy with this team? Or do I want to be on a bigger team or a better team or a more proven team? And so it's about that personal growth of saying, okay, this has been good or bad or indifferent, and I need to get to the next one. So it's about that constant movement, activity, being proactive, I think is the best way to move forward, and not just, trust that your bank or your advisor or your manager or your tax guy is always going to be putting you top of mind. And when you have that athlete type of mentality, you're not disrespectful to those people that are currently in your world, but you're constantly questioning it. You're constantly pushing it. You're constantly challenging it to make sure that the moment you feel status quo, the moment you feel there's a lack of movement or a lack of effort or a lack of focus around you, then you need to think about upping your game or upping your team. And you need to do it objectively, so that you don't get caught up in the emotions of all these things, because we've seen a lot of people, again, start somewhere and then all of a sudden they see a big shiny toy, and that's also a quick way to some devastating results as well.
No, for sure. Well, Heath, thank you so much. I mean, it's been a pleasure, one, just hearing from you and your experience, and then just seeing that growth that goes from professional sports field, but then doing that again and again in different realms. I think it's just not settling, plateauing, and just being constant focus on the growth and learning. I think that's apparent in everything that you've done so far. So congrats.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's really just about, again, what I would say to the athlete is think about everything through your lens of your sport, right? Who is your financial advisor in your sport? Is that a coach? Is that a manager? Is that the front office? And then the more that you can contextualize it within your language, the more that you'll go, oh, this is great, or that's not really right, right? The more that you can apply it to your world and your ecosystem and use that to help you make decisions elsewhere, I think it can be super beneficial.
No, I love that. Well, Heath, thank you so much for being here today, and hopefully we'll see you at one of our live events here coming up soon.
I hope so. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much.